Going alcohol free to me was actually a matter of life or death. And I write very transparently and vulnerably about this in my book. I didn't want to be alive anymore when I was in my addiction. And it wasn't the substance that was going to take me down. My physical body was actually persevering. You know, I was a fitness instructor, was very meticulous on my diet, my water intake. So I like physically was able to battle the poison I consumed every single day pretty well. But my mental health was so low that I didn't even want to be alive. And so for me to get sober or to eliminate alcohol was really choosing to be alive in my life. And I knew I was able to, even in that defeat and even in that really low mental health, I was able to know that if I was going to be free in my life, I had to be sober and the alcohol had to go. And alcohol had been a part of my identity for double digit years, you know, but I was willing to let it go because I was also willing to die, and that scared me.
Yeah.
You know, where you have those thoughts and then I actually took action and it's like, well, that's not actually what I want to do. So that's where eliminating the alcohol really came for me. And then it was like, well, shit, now what? You know, like
Yep.
now what do I do? I checked myself into a treatment center, a traditional treatment center. This was 8 years ago. So I really didn't know if there were any other options. It was just like, oh, you want to get sober? You go to a treatment center. So I did that. And what was neat about that was 21 days was the longest stretch I'd ever gone without alcohol.
Yeah.
I had never gone that long without alcohol. And so I was dry for 21 days and, you know, I got a little education, but I was actually pretty stoked. I knew that I made the right decision for myself. However, treatment is like this protective bubble. And so then it was like, now you're free, little birdie. And I was like, I don't know how to fly.
Right.
What do you want me to do out there in the real world? And there was a lot of fear-based messaging kind of given to me in those 21 days. And so now they opened the doors for me to leave and I was scared. I actually asked if I could stay longer. How am I supposed to live in this world if I don't do the thing I've always done? And you're telling me that sobriety is just a potential minefield of landmines that I'm going to step on and blow it all up.
Yeah, I remember
So
that
it was,
term.
yeah, it was so scary. It was not liberating to say the least outside of the protective bubble. And then it was just like, okay, every single day that's uncomfortable is just a day to learn how to show up being alcohol free. And there were a lot of uncomfortable days. You know, not only are you shifting chemically and hormonally and mentally and all of that, which is outside of your control, right? Your body's doing what it needs to do. You're just kind of re-identifying as a human. And that's transformational in a magnificent magnitude.
Yeah, I think you're hitting on something that I don't think I've really thought about until the way you're describing this is like, it's like, you know, when we're born, we don't remember learning how to hear. Right. Like learning directionality and like learning that a sound is associated with the movement. Like if I clap my hands and then I hear a sound, it's like, oh, that hand clapping made that sound. I'm starting to put that together. Oh, like I'm working out these blurs. That's my mom. Cool. That blur that looks like that, that's my mom. That blur that looks like that, that's my dad. Like we take for granted, like, you know, we're here, we're humaning, right? But when we go through a big change like that, like you're just talking about, like we're actively learning again as an adult that's physically involved in life how to be a human being, how to see again, how to hear again, how to be a goddamn, like get out and do public type facing things without that substance that's driving us. And that is like such an interesting thing to think about. You're basically a toddler. You've been thrown back out into the world and be like, okay, but you're a human and you're in an adult suit, so you got to be an adult. But it's like, I'm a raw nerve and I feel like a 3-year-old. I feel like I'm going to wet myself right now and I'm babbling and I'm tripping over my feet and I don't know what the colors are, but like I've got to go do bank shit. Like what the fuck is that?
Yeah. It's funny that you bring up toddler because when I reflect back to my beginnings of getting sober, my kids were young, right? My daughter was 2. And I think not that I would recommend like waiting until your children are young, but I think I got to hide behind being a stay-at-home mom during that time in my life. And so it was, I'll just air quote here, like easier for me to use the excuse of being at home with my kids than going out and facing a lot of the world. Now, add on the fact that I had 2 young children, like that in itself can be so overwhelming and triggering, which, but they were also like the motivation, a big, big part of my motivation for quitting. So yeah, I'm curious for you. You've shared about being a fitness trainer and taking care of your body and going into treatment. When you came out of treatment, what would you say was the hardest thing for you to cope with other than just not finding something to addict to?
What was the hardest thing to cope with was learning how to trust myself again was very confusing for me. And also how to navigate what I was being told when I didn't agree with everything I was hearing. And yet we're, in the traditional recovery path, there's suggestions, which I think are more rules, that you need to follow. And I have always liked following the rules, which I know sounds funny coming from an ex-addict, but I don't like breaking the rules. And I like to do things right. And I am an overachiever. And so I was checking all the boxes and it was misaligned. But I didn't understand energy enough to realize that I was living in misalignment. And so there was this battle of, I don't want to do that, but I'm being told this is what I need to do. And if I don't do it, will I get in trouble or will I do it wrong? And so I'm going to do it. And now I'm suffering. Why am I suffering? Aren't I supposed to be happy? I'm alcohol free now. I'm not drinking the drink that's making me miserable. Why am I miserable? So that was probably the toughest part after treatment was, you don't have anything that's altering your thinking mind. And yet you don't know how to navigate your thinking mind yet.
Wow.
Yeah.
And that's a double-edged sword because like what can keep us in those moments too is I'm paying my bills. I'm working out all the time. I eat well. Yeah, I might feel a little sluggish when I wake up, but I'm fucking 20, right? I'm 30. I could shake it off, right? But then it becomes like now I'm 35, now I'm 40, and I'm fucking constantly shaking this off. Like I don't have much more to shake, but it's that, that was my narrative for a long time. Like I would openly say that, like I feel like I have a drinking problem, but I'm still paying my bills. My kids are still happy. I'm doing all the shit that I'm supposed to be doing. I'm climbing ladders in career world. But that miserableness was just so present that I didn't realize because I kept pushing it down. But conversely, when I got to the other side of my own drinking, it was like, well, there was a reason you started, and it's because you were miserable. Do you know why you were miserable? Because that's where you should start looking at. And it's like, well, shit, now I'm a raw nerve. I don't have anything to numb this. And for me, I wasn't in the program. I was just fucking raw dogging it, just cold turkey. So, it's interesting. I mean, we've been friends for a long time, Lauren, and I think you actually took the journey before me, which was one of the inspirations that I had. So I had, friends and loved ones that I could depend on, but still it's kind of floundering out there. You're experiencing life in a whole different way, but still expected to be the person or the not even the status, but like on the directionality of where you were, but now it's different. And so how do you find that support? How do you build that support system back? The confidence in yourself, sometimes having to shed an entire friend group,
Entire life. Yeah.
Entire
it was
life.
Everything.
I mean, I kind of already hinted on this a little bit, but I had the mistaken belief or mistaken expectation that as soon as I stopped doing the thing that was making me miserable, I would be happy, right? And I would take on the world. And I was so ill prepared for even just the unmanageable bouts of fatigue that you go through in early sobriety, because again, your body is using all of this energy to recalibrate, to heal itself from the years of toxicity and poison. And for me, I, believed that idleness and being unproductive directly reflected my worth and all of that. And so now here I am, like physically wanting to just be idle and saying like, well, you can't be idle because what a waste of time. You need to go be productive because your productivity says everything about you. And so it was just a constant confliction and just this constant duality of wanting one thing and doing it a different way or feeling like it needed to be different. So that was tough. I think it's really important to manage those expectations, but it's like you have to know that you need to do that. And how do you even learn to do that? And that's why what you were saying, Adam, like finding support, you're raw dogging it, like, well done, my friend. I had a village, I had a team. And we don't know what we don't know until we learn it. And I just learned so many things. Like when my sponsor, who's now, you know, my best friend, was like, just be still for a moment, you know, just be still. And I was like, but if I'm still, then I'm not going to get my to-do list done. And I needed her to tell me that. Like I needed that permission slip because I wasn't giving it to myself.
Yeah.
You know, so it really is so important to have support, and that we can go off and make this a whole huge conversation just on that facet alone. But
Well, I mean, you've kind of alluded to the idea, and I think you even actually said that you're an overachiever, right? You're a hard worker, right? And that kind of shows up in the way that like we drink and do our drugs too, right?
Yeah.
Like I was really fucking good at getting my ass back up after a bender and doing shit. I was really good at putting away bottles of wine. I was really good at it, right? So like as good as I was about like living life, I'm also really good at drinking, right? And that's such a like a hard thing to do because like, you know, when we start to change our lives, and we're like, what, for whatever unhealthy reason, we got to the point of whatever we consider success, but then we find the reason, you know, like we want to change something, and that change, whatever it is, usually is a regression. Right, we regress because the things that we used to lean into, the alcohol, the numbing, the, you know, the just turning a blind eye to life and just, you know, moving into sensations, that no longer works. And when we change, we're going to regress and feel like we're doing worse. And that's a hard thing to do, especially if you're a high achieving individual, that all of a sudden it's like, well, I'm changing and now I feel worse than I did when I was just drinking and doing drugs all the time. So like, why am I changing in the first place? Why don't I just continue? I figured this part out. Right. And so it is like that trust exercise of like leaning into the idea of like, well, if I prove to myself that I can be this good at drinking, yeah, I can prove I can be this good at being sober. Right. It might take some time, and it's going to take some different friends, some different approaches, some different tools, some different stuff. And I'm going to feel like I'm regressing for a long time.
It's not a regressing though. What is it's a revealing.
But it feels in the moment. Like I'm speaking personally. It feels like a regression. I went from a high paying corporate level job, like fucking 6 figures, climbing ladders, to barely being able to pay my bills.
Yeah.
Right. But I was sober. Right. But I had to, but in order for me to get sober in Adam's world, and I'm going to say sober a lot in this episode, but I mean sober as in no alcohol. I still have plant medicines that I utilize. Right. But the sobriety that I found from alcohol, I had to change my entire life, like literally, like corporate job gone. I was in charge of too many wine menus. I was in charge of the bar programs as a general manager and director of operations of these restaurants I was working for. And so like I had to completely remove myself from an industry, from all the friends, from the career that I'd built, from all that. I'm not saying I had to, that was my choice, but like I went from running restaurants to at one point in time going back to waiting tables. That's how desperate I was just to make money. Right?
So the
just
judgment
to
is that you regressed and it felt that way.
100%.
But then, of course, like, then is the position of being able to question, why do we judge that as regression? Because that obviously from an outsider who's not in your body, not having your experience, not feeling that loss that you just felt, would be like, yeah, no, you're definitely growing.
I know.
You know, I feel like I need to chime in because what I do is I serve women who are changing their relationship to alcohol, going alcohol free. And I think regression is a great word because everything changes, and it can feel, and it does feel like loss.
Right.
You know, when your friend groups slip away, when your normal 6 p.m. ritual is no longer available to you, when your energy is lower than it is and you're not motivated, whatever it might be, all of those things kind of do feel like a loss. And then it's like, why am I doing this?
Right.
You know, why am I doing this? I didn't sign up to lose all my friends just because I don't want to drink alcohol anymore. So I think there's probably a lot of different word choices we can go in, but you are giving something up. You're giving up the alcohol, and there is a ripple effect by that choice.
Right. Yeah. And that's what I was saying when we were talking about, when we were talking about the problem, right? We'll just air quote the problem being the drinking. I remember being in my therapist's office and feeling really frustrated that my family wasn't like proud of me for not drinking and proud of me for doing the things that, you know, I should be doing at that time. And she said, like, you don't get an award for doing what you are responsible for doing. And while that may have felt like at that time, I definitely judged myself as regressing. Now looking back, the way that it's shifted for me and the way that I identify that is that I was actually just facing what was there all along that I had been masking with the alcohol. And so it sucked. It felt like I was falling into a dark hole. But I think that the way that I've had to frame it, which nobody has to adopt my way of thinking for sure, but I've had to frame it as a way of recognizing like I was growing so much that I couldn't recognize what was happening, which just felt like I was dying. I felt like I was losing everything. And so I think for me, it's a relative term to say in a conversation with people like, yeah, I felt like I was regressing. And for me, there is an attachment to acknowledge like, no, that's not actually what was happening. I was shedding. I was losing a lot of things that were weighing me down and keeping me blind to what I was being asked to heal. And that's why I think I feel attached to it, is because like to feel as though I was regressing doesn't feel motivating. It doesn't feel supportive to what my actual experience was. But if you were to ask me at that time when I was going through it, I for sure would have been like, oh yeah, I feel like I've totally gone backwards. So
I think that's one of the gifts of hindsight. You know, we get enough time away from something that we can, spin together a narrative that makes it make sense. You know, and it gives us some context so we can learn something from it.
Everything's in hindsight, right? But Aiua, when you said you don't get an award for just doing what you're supposed to be doing, I waltzed into that treatment center on my own dime, by my own choice. Like I decided to get sober. I asked for help. I registered, checked myself in, and I walked into my counseling group and I was expecting a fucking award.
Yeah.
Like look at this gold star.
Everybody stands up in slow class for Lauren as she comes in.
Good job, Lauren. And that I did not get that. I didn't even get the opportunity to introduce myself. My ego was so pissed. I was just another name on the roster, just another self-absorbed, self-centered addict. Yeah. And I was humbled very, very quickly. But I was expecting some sort of accolades or
some pomp and circumstance. She's like, she made it.
Yeah, she did it. And no, that didn't happen. So that made me laugh, Aiua, when you said that, because I can relate to that very, very personally.
Yeah. I did feel like I got that in the circles though. Like when and I would love to hear your perspective, because I know, or at least what I've made up is that through your program and what you offer is an alternative to what we would say is still like the, I don't know, mainstream way of getting sober, right? Like people go to treatment and then they go into a 12-step program. That's still the general idea for people. And things like becoming sober curious, or like, was it sober January? Was that the?
Yes.
Yeah. January.
Yep.
Yeah. So like dry January. Thank you. I was like, I don't feel like sober is the word, but it's cool that these things are becoming more trendy. But what's also cool is that there's people like you who are offering alternatives for people who maybe don't have the bandwidth to tolerate said, air quoting again here, suggestions, which if you've been in the rooms of AA or NA or any of the 12-step places, I will say in my personal experience, it greatly, greatly depends on the group that you walk into. And I remember my therapist, who was also in the program, telling me, you have to try a meeting 6 times before you decide it's not for you. And I was really glad that she said that, because I would walk in and immediately be like, barf, I don't want to be here. And then I would go again and be like, that was the best meeting I'd ever been in. But I want to hear from you, like what did work for you? And I would be really curious to hear more of the story of like what shifted you away to put you in the position that you're in now.
Yeah, you're bringing up something really, really important, and that is it's so important to really be mindful of who you're surrounding yourself with, because what I first experienced when I got sober was surrounded by struggle and surrounded by people who were forced into this, when maybe it wasn't by choice, it was by intervention or court ordered. And it was, energy and messaging of, let's set you up for your failure. That's inevitable. Right. And then we'll see you back. And what's so important is like you are doing something really fucking hard when you're deciding to give up a deeply ingrained habit that also is physically addicting. And so celebrate the hell out of that. You
Mm-hmm.
know, I just think it's so, so, so important to be in the energy of uplifting and celebration and motivation and inspiration and people who believe in your success
Yeah.
and not people that are just preparing you for your failure. And so that's what completely shifted the way that I decided to see my recovery. And that's why I did end up moving away from some of the rooms I was in. And it's also how I coach today is we're gonna assume that you're gonna win at this.
Yeah.
We're going to assume that you are going to succeed and that you're going to live a very fulfilling life as an alcohol-free human. And so I just do believe it's important to have that sort of support and to be mindful of what you're absorbing, the messaging that you are absorbing, because it gets embedded, it gets ingrained, and then it's what we believe without even realizing we're believing it.
Yeah.
You know, and that's why I was so scared in early sobriety. I chose to get sober and I truly believed it was going to free me. But then I'm hearing that I'm going to fail. And I started to believe that that was inevitable for me. That was
Mm.
never my belief. I am like, I am an overachiever. I am a competitive athlete. When I set out to do something, I set out to fucking win. So when I decided to get sober, that was my mindset. But I'm hearing so much about failure that I was like, is that just what's going to happen? You
Yeah.
know, am I just destined to not succeed at this? Which goes completely against how I'm designed.
Yeah. Do you
So,
think, and there's, I've only been to a couple meetings, a couple court order meetings that I did not fare well at. They were DUIs when I was in my 20s. And the last meeting I went to, I had been alcohol free for about 2 years, and I had a buddy that I was trying to help just find his path, right? And he, he's like, well, let's go to a meeting. I'm like, okay, cool. Went to a meeting and it was great. I felt really good at it, but I also did not feel like it was my place, right? I didn't feel like, oh, I found a community, right? I had already been, alcohol free for a couple of years. But it felt like I was just going through the process, right? Just going through the steps. But I stood up, "Hey, my name's Adam, I'm an alcoholic, da, 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 da." And that was the first time I voluntarily said, I'm an alcoholic.
Mm-hmm.
And I've
Which
got
is
no,
required.
but I've got no problem saying that. But I've heard you talk about this before, Lauren, and I love the perspective that you gave. I think kind of what you're saying here, like not undermining, but underneath a lot of what you're saying is like, if I constantly recognize I was an alcoholic after I've removed it from my life, am I keeping myself in this box? In this labeled box of like, I'm always going to be this thing. And in this thing, if I define it for myself, and I'm not defining anybody out there that says they're an alcoholic or has a problem, but in my own definition of it, I am weak. I lost something. I was not able to do something. I lost my pleasures, right? Dionysus, if you will, right? I don't want to be that. I don't want to recognize as that. So if every time I enter into a space and be like, oh yeah, my name's Adam, don't forget, I'm an alcoholic. I could be 90 years old and be 45 years removed from alcohol. And I'm still like, oh, I'm an alcoholic. That doesn't resonate with me. And so you've talked about that. So do you mind kind of like sharing your perspective on that constant just recognition of something that we're trying to move past?
100%. I do believe that language shapes our reality. And so labels can do that. It can help us and it can hurt us. To quote Aiua, she said something that I've always stuck with: fuck the box, I'm out.
Mm.
Fuck the box, I'm out. You know, I did not want to be in that box anymore. I didn't fit in. I, grew up my whole life just not fitting in the boxes I was put in.
Mm.
That being said, I am not anti-rooms, and
Right.
I don't think any of us here are. We
Right.
are definitely advocates of getting support and community and what it's like to be uplifted by people around you with shared struggle. And I do know that for some, the alcoholic label, it keeps them humble. It's the
Mm-hmm.
humility that's required for them to stay away from alcohol. I didn't need that.
Right.
I was going to stay away from alcohol without the label. And so what I'm an advocate for is personal choice, and really tuning in that it's like that personal self-attunement process where it's like, does this work for me? Is this hurting me or helping me? Do I want to embody this or do I want to shed it, let it go, and maybe take on something new?
Mm-hmm.
So I'm all about the individual having that self-attunement process that leads to the choice on how they want to represent themselves in the world. It's going to be different for everyone. I did it the way that works for me. But the entire foundation of my early sobriety was on the foundation of the AA 12-step program. And so for a full well, it wasn't a full year, but for many, many months, I did declare it. And in that time of my life, it helped me understand the problem.
Yeah.
But like all problems can be solved. And I felt like I solved the problem and I just didn't need to keep talking about it.
Welcome, love. If you're feeling the pull to remember your power, soften your body, and return to your truth, I invite you into my world of healing arts and transformational coaching. I'm Aiua Wild, intuitive guide, energy medicine woman, and creator of Sensuous Revival Healing Arts. I help individuals and couples release old patterns, dissolve shame, reconnect with pleasure, and rise into a more liberated life. Through sacred pelvic healing, somatic practices, intuitive body talk, and emotional integration, you'll learn to listen to your body, trust your intuition, and create relationships that feel nourishing and aligned. Whether you work with me one-on-one, join a retreat, or step into my online program, you'll receive an experience of deep presence, compassionate guidance, and practices that create lasting change. If your soul is ready for more freedom, more pleasure, and deeper truth, I'm here. Learn more at sensuousrevival.com or reach out directly to begin your journey. I think that was interesting too, being in a wide range. For my first, probably 2 to 3 years, I primarily went to women's groups. And I would say for anybody who's going to try to navigate these areas, if you also have issues with relationships, maybe finding a group that supports that, right? Like there's certain suggestions that I received in those rooms that were really, really helpful, right? Like don't start a relationship in early recovery, don't make any major decisions, blah, 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 right?
But I did not follow any of those rules or suggestions, I should say.
Yeah, I was pretty well protected. Yeah. And, again, I'll look at that and be like, I learned a lot when I made those choices that were against what was recommended. But I also appreciated that people started to choose their own terminology and, they make suggestions and you don't have to follow the suggestions. You might have to sit with the reality that you're going to piss off what we would call an old timer who was really, really rigid about certain invitations or, guidelines.
Right.
But there were people that would say, I'm a recovering alcoholic or I'm in recovery, right? And so there was like different terminology that was starting to come in. For me, the term alcoholic was nostalgic. Like I had a completely different experience with it. I was like, I'm part of the club. And this tells me that I shouldn't drink. And that was basically all I took it as. And it really helped me keep it simple. It was like, but the difference for me too was like, one, I didn't go to treatment. I was going to women's groups that were so like steeped in solution and really deep support. And like as a young mom and having kids and having childcare, like there was so much more than just quit drinking and like there was a lot of learning. And so the label of alcoholic didn't have the stink or the stench that a lot of people can feel when they're being asked to admit that. And I want to share that because I want to give a wide range of how people can experience the concepts. And I remember being younger and people being like, you probably have a drinking problem. And I was like, I know I'm an alcoholic, but I don't feel like it's a problem. So,
yeah.
That's
eventually
funny that you say that. Like I just mentioned, the word alcoholic helped me understand that there was a problem.
Yeah.
Right. However, before I chose to get sober, when I was in my self-loathing, self-pity state of being while steeped in multiple glasses of alcohol, it was, oh my God, am I an alcoholic? And there was just all this shame and embarrassment wrapped around it.
Yeah.
So it was such a conundrum because it's like, I think I'm this thing, but I can't possibly be this thing, but all my actions are proving that I am this thing. And now as a sober woman, I can absolutely say like, yeah, I'm an alcoholic. I can't go back to alcohol. I'm not too proud to say that. I know that I had the obsession of the mind. If I wasn't drinking, I was recovering from drinking or thinking about drinking. The physical dependency was more so just trying to always cure hangovers. I was lucky that I didn't hit that point where I couldn't function without drinking, but maybe I would have gotten there. Who knows? But it wasn't just a bad habit. It wasn't just a little recreation on the side for me. It was deeper than that. And that doesn't happen to everyone. So I do fit in that label, and there's many people who don't. But I think it is important to give, again, that wide range of there's multiple experiences you can have if you want to nestle under this label. And then, of course, just always letting it be your own choice.
Yeah. You mentioned negotiating with yourself, and I think a lot of that happens when I think on a subconscious level, when we choose to drink or move into a substance of some sort. It's like, okay, I'm gonna like have this last glass of wine. It's 1 o'clock in the morning. I've got to get up at 7. I can do that. That's fine, right? You're making these. I'm gonna be a little tired. I'll have extra coffee. I'll make it strong. You start to like plan your recovery more or less, and that's. I don't know. It's kind of it's a toxic thing to get into, right? But it's kind of like a forward thinking thing in a way too, right? You're really kind of you're planning, you're looking ahead, and so there's the reason I bring it up is because there's a lot of like transferable skills that can happen when we do get sober in our own rights. That a lot of the drinking and the drugs and alcohol, whatever we've gotten into, can be very strong attributes because like if we're successful and we're that intoxicated all the time.
How about just finding the money for it?
Thinking about like the structure, the financial success, like all this stuff that you could actually have with that dedication without the thing having to put the blinders on you or put that shade down. So like, is there still like an audible negotiation with life, maybe a little more present negotiation with life in a positive way now that you don't have this thing that's kind of like pulling you back into this like stupor in a way?
Yeah. I mean, it's like, look how proactive I am preparing for my hangover.
Right, exactly.
It's like, it's not even corrective measures. I'm still in preventative measures. I am a planner. I do think ahead. I'm a big adventurer, but I like to have all my supplies, and so it's this combination of spontaneity who's well prepared, right? And so those are skills, like when your life involves the continual battle of a hangover, for instance, you do learn, what do I need to do? What do I need to drink? How do I need to eat? How much sleep do I need to get? And there is all of this preparedness that goes into it. I mean, even just me saying that is exhausting.
Yeah.
Life of a struggle with alcohol is so much more than sipping and swallowing the liquid.
Yeah.
So much more than that. So in terms of carrying it over, second guessing things now or overthinking, I mean, I definitely overthink things, but the obsession of the mind that comes with having that dysfunctional relationship with alcohol, for me, absolutely quieted in sobriety, but it does pick up in other ways now. And I can see that it's my addict behavior coming through as a sober woman. Mm-hmm. It's like coming through in different ways. I'm just not drinking the alcohol. So
yeah. And that's a great point too. That kind of goes to that statement made earlier. There's something that drew us to this behavior in the first place. And, on the back end of that, because I know you not only do you have this beautiful book, Blurred Lines, you wrote, you coach people in alcohol recovery. Is there, when the people that you're helping, like how hard is it for them to get that message and that understanding of like, there is a positive person in here still. There is positive attributes that you can pull from this thing that you're trying to move away from, right? It's not a complete reset. It might feel like it, right? Because you're changing a lot of life, but as people start to come in and that desperation panic, right? I need to change. I can't do this anymore. And a lot of times like the change comes from the drinking becoming harder now to stay drunk than it was to be sober.
Well,
right?
And I also
because we're
love
getting the DTs and we're getting the
bridge that Lauren is creating, at least from the distance that I'm watching, is like the people that, at least this is my assumption, maybe I should turn it more into a question, but I feel excited about the fact that there are people like you out there doing this work where people don't have to get to the bottom of the bottom, where they're choosing to quit drinking before they're getting the DTs. They're choosing to look at the relationship before they lost a marriage, lost a job, estranged from a child, whatever. Like that, there's this huge gap between healthy social drinking, if that is a thing. I'm not judging, but I'm just putting it out there, the idea of it. And then like, what we would hear growing up, living under a bridge, like that there is now this space in between that says, I'm especially for women I heard this a lot for perimenopausal women, like as we're aging, the way that the body metabolizes things. But I do want to go back. I want to hear the rest of what you're saying, but like, I'm really excited about that in between state of not having to wait until the DTs hit before getting sober.
Well, I think a lot of that is too that there's options now. Like it's not just you've got to go do the Bill W thing, right? Just do AA. There's options now. There's the book you've written. There's there's a lot of different whether you're religious, non-religious, different ways to approach it, right? So the people that are coming in that you're helping and that you're having this opportunity to help with and to hold that space for, what's kind of the process that you're approaching with to help them understand that it's not all lost. Right. There is definitely parts of you that can transfer it from that old you to this new you. Right. It's not just a complete wash. What's some of that verbiage or some of the ideas that people can to even just hear now to say like, oh man, it's not all lost for me. Right. I do have a path. I can make a change. Right.
Gosh, there are so many ways I want to take these questions. One thing that I think is really important to share is having a problem with something or failing at something or struggling with something can become the biggest gift you've ever had because of what you learn going through it, what you learn recovering from it, who you become on the other side of it. The resiliency that is built through struggle is what makes some of the most powerful humans we have today. That's how we learn. And so I'm so grateful that I'm alive. I'm grateful that I did not actually die, but I'm so grateful that I had the problem because of who I am today, how I show up today, how strong I know I am today, and how I can serve today. So I say often that my addiction gave me my purpose. I had to go through that so that I can look someone in the eyes and say, I know, me too. Unless you've really been through it, you'll never know what it's actually like. And so imagine going to a therapist for your alcohol problem and they've never had an alcohol problem. They'll never know. They'll never know. So I think that just to squash the shame of that you failed at something or that you have this problem, I'm like, what a fucking gift that you recognize there's a problem, because you can't solve a problem if you don't know there's a problem.
Right.
So once you know that there is, then we've got something to solve, then we've got something to do. We've got work to do. And so that's how I show up for my clients today, because where I was hesitant with my story is that suicide is a part of my story. And it's like just what Aiua said, you do not have to get that low before you decide to make a change. So I'm like, well, shoot, if I share this part of my story, am I actually going to repel people? Because they're like, oh, I was not that bad.
Right.
It's like, that's why I'm sharing it with you, is to tell you don't have to get this bad, that we can get ahead of it first. And so I always say the second that you decide that your life is no longer acceptable to you, or that it's no longer good enough, or that you're tired of settling for good enough, or that you're no longer fulfilled or satisfied, or you can have more and you actually want more, and you've recognized maybe one thing that's in your way, then do something about it. And so you can get ahead of it at any point. And we have to delete the narrative of the homelessness and the empty bank account. I was neither of those things.
Right.
I lived in a bougie Seattle apartment with a plump bank account.
Which I was laughing when you two were both talking about that. I was like, I was not that.
You're like, I did not. Yeah. And the women I work with are, career women or wives or mothers. Like, they are not disheveled living under a bridge. They're not at risk of financial implosion, but they're not happy.
Right.
And they recognize that their drinking is a problem for them. The biggest thing to work around, though, then is the comparison trap.
Yeah.
It's like, but maybe I'm not that bad, but I'm functioning just fine. And then also it's the shame. If I give it up, what are my friends going to think about me? Like, I'm this perfect, well pulled together housewife, and then I'm going to stop drinking the champagne on Sunday brunches. What are people going to think about me?
Right.
So that's where really big work comes through.
Yeah.
I learned something before I got sober, but reiterated in my sobriety, that people don't think about you as much as you think they do.
100%.
I was so angry when this person said that to me.
Yep.
And I was like, holy shit, it's true. I just thought everyone thought about me,
right.
And cared what I was doing. People don't care they care about themselves.
Yeah.
And so that's what I say. I was like, you are the most important person in the room. You are doing this for you. It is your decision. It's a sacred decision. It's your life. You have full authority on how you want to live your life. Do not let someone else's opinion make you settle or make you not solve this problem that you've recognized.
What I found was that the people who were irritated by my not drinking were the ones who were worried about their drinking.
Of course.
Yeah,
It's a reflection, right? It's mirror work.
Yeah.
I've got a really good friend that was quit drinking for 6 months. It's a personal choice. Just their life made them want to. And this person had 6 months sober, and I checked in with them and was like, "Hey man, how's it going? It's been now 7 months." He's like, "I actually went back to drinking." Okay, why? That's, hey, your choice, right? Why'd you do that? Well, I made my friends feel awkward because I was the one that was not drinking around them. So to your point, this person, and now that was like 5-7 years ago, that person has mentioned many, many times how they wish they would have stopped then, or wish they could have the courage to stop again. But I think a lot of us were socially pressurized to go to happy hour with our coworkers, or to have that glass of wine with our mom group, or whatever it is. And you mentioned something earlier, and I really want to get into it, just like touch on it, but we're not really given a lot of space to explore our own personal individualities. Mm-hmm. Like, we're a lot, and like, even if you look at the optimization phase craze that's going on right now, who can I look at that's going to do life the best so I can do life like them, sleep the best, meditate the best, run the best, eat the best, do all this shit the best? Because if I look at Chris Williamson and he's doing all that shit and I just mirror him, I'm going to be good. So in a way, we're mirroring all the people we think were successful. All of my predecessors in the restaurant industry and the sales industry and all that shit were fucking raging alcoholics with gigantic noses that drove Beamers and Benzes and fucking went on month-long vacations and cruises and shit, right? And had like picturesque families and all this stuff. And of course, that's what I'm looking towards, right? These are my role models and shit, right? But that person was just following a path that was put in front of them also. They didn't actually stop and say, am I happy doing this? Because when I finally got sober and those people were still in my life, they're like, I wish I would have done that when I was in my 40s, because I'm fucking miserable and I'm 70 now and I don't see a path, right? And so I think, to your point, there's, you know, and to the credit of the program you're creating and the people you're helping, it allows the person to be seen as a person and not saying, hey, here's this blanket statement that you got to come in and say you're an alcoholic, and then you got to come in and listen to, and then you got to do, and then you got to do, and then you got to do. But that doesn't fit me, right? Mm-hmm. And so that's why I love programs like yourself. I have a friend named Blue Andrews that also wrote a program called Choose Life, right? You know, and it's like these non-religious ways and these very individualistic ways to say, like, I see you as the person that you are. Let me help you. Let me find. Let me find you the way that you can get the best help.
Yeah, you know, it's very radical and revolutionary and wild to do things your own way. And it's a little scary too when you're not in the protection of the familiarity. If you're gonna forge your own path, then you're kind of walking into the unknown. And so again, it comes back to that self-trust. But that's why my book is called Blurred Lines, you know, like being raised between strict lines that I didn't fit in. Mm-hmm. And so those lines got blurred, but you have to also give yourself permission to step outside of those lines. And all of this, I think, is going to come back to that the conversation about support and group, who the groups are that you're with, who your network is. I think that you can self-attune and do it your own way without having to isolate and without having to be like, a lone wolf or anything like that. I think that if you are in the right supportive structure, that gives you the freedom to explore. And what's so beautiful about that is if you have the freedom to explore and then your parachute doesn't open, you have a safe space to land, right? Like you have people that will catch you. And so with the friend, for instance, who decided to go back to drinking to make his friends more comfortable at his own cost, right? At his own expense. The harsh way to say that is get new friends.
Yeah.
Right.
The kind way to say that is it's very, very important to, again, choose who you're surrounding yourself with, because you want to surround yourself with the people that want you to succeed at what you're doing and that are able to set aside their own discomfort for your success. And so that is part of the sobriety alcohol-free journey that I think is wildly under-discussed. It leads to grief, which is also very confusing. Again, like, why am I so sad when I'm doing something so empowering for myself? And that is that the people that you are around will most likely change.
Yeah.
And
Right.
friendships that are so long but are deeply rooted in shared drink or shared habits and rituals and behaviors might fall away, and then you're left alone. And we all know that the number one need of the human experience is to belong. And so if I'm going to eliminate this thing and now I'm going to be alone, why would I eliminate this thing?
Yeah.
And so we have to find the people that are like, you're not alone in this choice that you're making. I had a friend tell me while I was in treatment, she wrote me a letter. It said, not everyone will stay, but the right people will.
Yep.
Right.
And
Right.
the right people will. And then that grows. And then you meet more right people, and then you meet more right people, and suddenly you have a whole new tribe.
Right.
And I'm not saying you have to throw away your friendships or anything like that. I'm just saying it's very possible that there will be misalignment, and it's radical honesty that there might need to be change.
Yeah, it's interesting. Like my initial group, I mean, I got sober almost 17 years ago. I don't know that there's any friend that I would say that like is still in my life at a measurable capacity, right? I still keep in contact with certain people, but the friends that I established kind of that branched off of some of those friendships, I still have a core group of women in my life, and I'm the only sober one. Like, you know, sober meaning like I actively, intentionally maintain a life of avoiding recreational substance use. So, like, it doesn't always stay that way. Like, I'm not just only hanging out with people who don't drink. And what I remember, I think my first or second sponsor said, you know, you might want to avoid going to bars for the first couple of years. And I was like, ew, the bar, like what? Why would I even go? And now, like, I have to beg my friends. I mean, granted, we're all like perimenopause or menopausal. So I'm like, come on, somebody go out with me, because I still like to party, but I don't drink. And so, like, we had an amazing girls' trip to Nashville several years ago. But I was also the one that was like, okay, guys, time to go back. And they were like, you know, quite inebriated. They're like, no, we want to keep going. And I was like, I'm getting in a van. I think you should come with me. And they like, you know, complained about it. But the next day they were like, I'm so glad we didn't keep going. And they all felt like shit. And I was like, hey, who wants to go to breakfast?
Yeah.
But we lose a lot. For me, I'll speak to my story. I felt like I lost everything. And I'm really glad that I had the support through my therapist, through the other women in recovery, through a couple friends that didn't understand, but still showed up to the coffee dates. You know, I definitely had a few experiences where I felt very judged. Like, I was moody. I don't know if you experienced this, Lauren, but
Yeah. I learned I was an angry person when
oh
I got
my
sober.
God.
Yeah.
Yeah, so moody. And like I had a few people that were like, oh my God, you're so moody. And like at that time, one of them didn't know. They were kind of a new person in my life. They didn't know what was going through. And I was like, I just got sober. And they were like, oh my God. And you know, they may or may not have had a challenge with alcohol. But like what came from all of that and the richness and the beauty in the relationships that I have, and really my capacity, like drinking doesn't bother me like I used to. Like I'm not attracted to it. Like as of right now with what's going on in the world, I am so glad that I'm not a drinker. Cause like, I feel like there's lots of reason to want to like anesthetize emotions and avoid. But, I'm curious from the transition. So you were kind of doing the traditional route, and then you moved away from that. Was there like a turning point or an episode that happened that kind of did that for you? How did you move away from what you had been doing, and kind of what do you do now for your own personal journey, I'd say?
My turning point started about 4 months in. I had a new sponsor who is still, you know, my right-hand man today. She's like the first person I call in crisis. And we were in the rooms together, but she was also in another room, you know, outside of the 12-step program. And we didn't even get through the fourth. I mean, we did the fourth step, and then obviously 5 and 6 and what I don't even remember what 7 is, but those ones are kind of just, they happen, right?
Yep.
Love and all of that, acceptance, integration. Those are like the integration steps. I've never thought of it that way before. Anyways, I didn't finish the steps because basically she was like, I see that your heart and your mind and your energy is taking you elsewhere. I was receiving Reiki for many, many months at that point, and I was just seeing the world through different eyes, but I didn't know how to understand what I was feeling and seeing. And so we went into a different room that was really about choice, 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 choice. Everything is a choice. You can, and then when you don't like the choice you've made, you can choose again. And everything can be in the essence of love. And it was just like, here's the language. Finally, I just felt like, oh, like a light switch flipped on and I was home. And it was, and the crowd, you know, I would say most of them were sober, but my litmus test on who is in my circle is not, do you drink or not? It's, do we have shared values? Do we have the same way that we look at the world? I mean, not identical, but are we kind of in the same, you know, lane together? And that was that room of people where it was like, I don't want to stay stuck in my story. I don't want to be a victim anymore. I don't want to keep suffering. How do I get to the other side of it? So it really was growth mentality and expansion mentality and just like high vibe, for lack of a better word. And I really connected with that. And I embedded it, and it just became like I was a walking, living, breathing representation of this new way of living. And that's how I show up in the world. And so organically, that's what I reflect to other people who come into my orbit. So it happened very, very quickly for me. However, caveat, I lived in a sober house and there were requirements to attend AA meetings 3 a week. So, and I lived in the house for a year. So for an entire year, I went to 3 AA meetings a week, even though at month 4, I shifted to this other group. So I was doing both, and there were crossover that was beautiful. And then there was startling contrast where it was like magnets repelling against one another.
Yeah.
And I definitely had one that I favored over the other. And that's what I stuck with.
Yeah. Are you, do you consider yourself like a spiritual or religious person?
I consider myself spiritual.
Yeah.
Yeah. I have no problem saying the word God. To me, it's love. You know, I don't have a religious connotation to it, but I'm very spiritual. I definitely believe in just the universal power of shared energetics and the support of things outside of ourselves that are unseen.
Yeah. Do you think that was was that a belief system you had prior while you were still drinking, or was that something you kind of came to as you found sobriety and found just this different way of life?
Yeah, that's a great question. I just don't think I thought about it before sobriety. It wasn't really presented to me the way it is, like you can't miss it in sobriety. It's going to be presented to you whether you accept it or not. You're going to be handed the option to look at it. And before sobriety, I just trucked along, you know, endorphins were always popping as a fitness instructor. And I just, yeah. However, my grandfather, my paternal grandfather, was a Methodist minister. And so that we did not grow up in a religious family. We did pray before dinner, but we didn't go to church. It wasn't really a part of my life. I definitely had the choice to not be put into that box if I didn't want to be. Yeah. But what I witnessed from him was this taking a message and a lesson and then presenting it in shared space and having, you know, the elevation of emotions. And so that part of the spirituality, religion aside, stuck with me.
That was probably my biggest hurdle in the 12-step world. I came from a not really healthy relationship to, I'll just say, God. I mean, it was religion. It was also really complicated. Like, I used to joke that my dad's family was Catholic, and I would say they were the most abusive in my experience. And then my mom never really talked about God, but I think that she has a deep connection to nature. But I would say maybe agnostic. And then my soul dad was this hippie who would take me to all these like Unitarian churches or non-denominational Christian churches. And I just loved the community, which is a big part of what I loved about the 12-step space. But when I got in there, I always joke that I crossed out the word God everywhere it was in my big book because I used to say the word God made me gag. And and it was really hard for me. And the one thing that I really loved, because I didn't have the means to hire a coach, I didn't have any other avenue that I was aware of that to help me through that time. And AA, it's donation based still, and it was like, if you can't afford it, just keep coming. But the thing that they said was take what you like and leave the rest. And that, honestly, I would say for a big part of my experience, I was leaving a lot.
Yeah.
I just was grateful to be sitting in a room. I think for me, a lot of my healing was about being able to purge my story and have people hear me and not pull away, but also give me conversations afterwards that helped redirect me. And so, like, all of the things that you're talking about, like surrounding yourself with people who are going to support you and cheer you on, like, that was what I experienced. And it's crazy to look back now. Like, I love the question that Adam presented. Like, do you feel like you were a spiritual person before you got sober? Like, not at the time that I feel like I was kind of at the height of my addictions, but like nature has always been this divine way of speaking to me. And so, like, fast forward in your journey, you were doing Reiki. That was part of, like, I'm assuming that was part of your support and your self-care that you were doing in early recovery. Is that part of your program now? Is that something that you teach the people that you're coaching? Because for me, that's foundational in my own recovery and also what I teach. And so I'm curious, where does that come in for you with how you support people? Or like, what is the importance, the way that you maybe measure the importance when helping people?
I measure the importance of energy to the utmost highest level of importance. I think that it is crucial that we learn how to read our own energy, you know, and we outsource it to Reiki masters and whatnot, which is great. It's so good to have those tools and to have that sort of therapy, which I am one and I still receive. But also, how can you read yourself, kind of full circling back to that self attunement process. I started receiving Reiki before I got sober. It was please help me, anything. I need something. I'd never heard of it before. My hippie aunt suggested it. And I said yes, like, sure, put me on the table. And it was an experience I'll never forget. It was so profound and impactful. And I did not have the means to know what to do with that.
Yeah.
And so I went home that night and I drank a bottle of red wine like I did every other night, so how do I answer this question? I think energy, yes, is definitely a part of how I practice today. Has always been a part of my own personal recovery journey. It showed up before I entered into the recovery journey, I guess, in just a different way of trying to recover. And I really feel like the only person that's going to know you the best is yourself.
Yeah.
And there's so many ways we can do that. And tapping into energy is the deepest way.
I love that. I also received Reiki a couple years before I got sober and had a similar experience of being like, whoa, what was that? And I got my initial Reiki attunement almost a year before I got sober. And I think it really highlighted just the chaos. Like, it's hard to be a clear channel when you're drowning it in, substance. And so I love that. I love the integration of these different practices and kind of weaving them in. So what made you decide maybe you had other questions, Adam, but I'm going to jump in. What made you decide to write a book?
The book has always been brewing. I love writing. I am a communicator. My entire Instagram is a running blog, basically, of my entire sobriety. I posted as soon as I could post getting out of the treatment center. There were no electronics in there. So just a few days after getting out, I was just under 1 month sober and I put it online. And that was an act of bravery, to say the least. It was I was like shaking, like, am I really going to post? What are people going to think about me? I will, like, forever change how people see me. if I put out there into the world, or whoever follows my Instagram, that I am a recovering alcoholic, So, so I've been an open book basically for the whole journey. And it was like, okay, now I need to put this in a book. And part of that was secrets. Secrets almost killed me. Secrets kept me sick. Secrets is why I would have died before anyone knew I actually was struggling as bad as I was struggling. And I wrote about them. The book was my way to free the secrets, to really let people into the story. And also writing the book it felt required for the mission that I'm here to serve, on how I'm here to help people. It wasn't just, hey, let me tell you my story. Will you read my story? It was, is it possible that my story could change yours? Is it possible that what I went through can change what you may go through? Can it change the trajectory of your life by reading this story? And so it's always had a greater purpose and a greater mission than just, let me write about myself. I'm like, who am I? I'm too young to write a memoir. I'm nameless to write a memoir, right? And that's not what it was about.
Yeah.
So thank you for asking that question, because I think the book is the most profound, impactful piece of work I've ever done.
Well, not only is it expressing the work that you're doing, the story that you're telling, but I'm sure there's a layer of it too that's a little terrifying, because there's a lot of people in your life that and have known you and know you very intimately well that probably don't know this side of you. I'm one of those people, and I've we've known each other for almost a decade now, and so I don't know like the full past. I've known what you've shared, but like friends, family, people that have grown with you through this journey, and all of a sudden they're like, holy shit, we had no idea. So there's probably even a fear of, do I want these people to know this depth about me, that actually see me every day or within a regularity, to be like, hi, yeah, that was me. But to your point, also the courage and the strength that somebody might find from somebody that close to them, that they had no idea that they were shielding that much pain and suffering, to be like, fuck, what am I not looking at within myself? Because that girl, I thought she had it together. She was doing all of her shit, right? And so like, was there like an apprehension or like a coming to God kind of idea of like, okay, here it is. We're just going to put it all out there.
Was there an apprehension? Adam, I can't tell you how many times I fell to my knees and was like, what the fuck am I doing? Just scared out of my mind. Am I really going to hit publish on this? I was so I have no problem getting on podcasts and coaching strangers and standing in front of rooms and doing keynote speeches. But if I have to say it in front of people who know me, and it's like, I had to break down every egoic protective wall that was in me on image management and perception, on how I wanted to be perceived. And so, yes, there was a reckoning for sure. And there's three people so my parents have not read the book.
Okay.
They have heard excerpts because they come support me at my book readings. They've heard their friends' feedback, all positive. They know it's deep. They know it's heavy. They know it's not about them, that they're in it, but it's not like my parents failed me, So they haven't read it. And then there's people like my great uncle Lauren, my dad's uncle, an astronaut.
Yeah.
He read the book and he said, Lauren, if I didn't know that this had a happy ending, I wouldn't have been able to make it through the book. And so there was that. And then there's my sister, who is my best friend. She's in the book. She just read it. And she said two things that really stuck with me. One is, I know more about you now. Like, there were things I did not know that I learned in this book. There are things that you said in this book that I remember differently, and how interesting that we can have such different experiences at the same thing.
Yeah.
But the second thing that she said was, I understand you better now. And that was the mic drop moment for me. It was like, I was terrified of image management, and yet here I am, fully vulnerable, raw, and exposed, and I'm understood. Wow.
Yeah, I was thinking, because I've been brewing with something for a while. I got a little bit more information over the last couple weeks about writing, and what has been paralyzing is about sharing my truth and knowing that there are still people living that would be part of that and what their experience of it may be, right? And I know Diedrich talks about this in his book, Writing Choose Again, and he talks about the fire truck and him and his brother and the relationship that they had with the fire truck, that they thought it was like different colors and who it belonged to. Do you, how do I phrase this? In the book, are you willing to share like what was the hardest thing for you to reveal? Was it about a specific scene or experience? Was it about a person?
There's probably two answers to that. The first one is the suicide attempt is written very detailed.
Mm-hmm.
It was the hardest chapter for me to write. It was the scariest chapter for me to write. It was the one that took me the longest to write. I didn't want to write it. I didn't write my book from start to finish. I wrote, they all weave together. It's chronological, but I did write based on where the inspiration hit, where the story came through. And I put off that chapter for quite a while because no one really knows. No one else was there. My dog was there and he can't speak. And so that was me showing something that had never been seen before. Mm-hmm. But the other part was the rape scene. There's a rape scene in college. And I was so scared that I was going to get in trouble, like that the man that raped me was going to sue me. And it was my editor that said, Lauren, do you really think someone's going to be like, hey, that was me and I don't appreciate the way she talked about me?
Right.
Like, is someone really going to out themselves? And so here I am, a victim, truly a rape victim, still protecting the man who raped me. I was scared to reveal, and obviously I don't say his name, but whatever, people in my life know who he is. Those were like serious thoughts I had was, can I get in trouble for this?
Yeah.
And how crazy, right? That I was still wanting to protect those people. So those were probably the two hardest ones. But I have to say, you don't ever publish your first draft.
Yeah.
When I read my first draft, I was like, oh, there's still anger here. And oh, there is still blame here. And oh, this part is still, unhealed. Not that we'll ever be fully, but this part still needs some humility and some ownership. And so you rewrite and you rewrite, and the book is written in the editing process. It's not written in the first draft. And there's a softening that happens, and there's a way that you actually start to see things differently. And then there's this gratitude for the people that did show up for you, that something happened that I was angry about, and as I wrote my book, I was like, it all makes sense, and I was soft about it now. Beautiful process.
Wow.
How I've always said, though, it would be easier if the closest people, like if I wrote this later in life when the people who were involved were no longer alive.
Right.
Did you expect this? I mean, probably going into writing the book, you probably thought it was going to be like, okay, this is impactful. This is helping me process some stuff. And, another part. Did you realize it was going to be this big of a part of your journey? Because going into sobriety, it's like, okay, that's going to be big because I'm removing this thing from my life. You've been doing this sobriety thing for a number of years. You're helping people. You're doing a lot of stuff, right? So now you're on I wouldn't say the back end, but you're on the coaching end of the sobriety side. And that doesn't mean like we've checked boxes, but a lot of times we could be like, cool, that part, we figured that out. And then all of a sudden, here's this project and you're writing these things and revisiting opportunities in a different way that maybe you haven't thought about in a while. And then the people involved, and am I going to get in trouble? And they're like, why the fuck would I get in trouble? Like that whole process. I mean, there's got to be a catharsis in that too, that either you maybe had an idea there's going to be a little bit of a release, but all of a sudden it's like, fuck. Like you said, angry, first draft. I'm angry. I'm still pissed at this situation. Maybe I should use more descriptive words on the person I'm describing rather than tattooed yoga guy, right? But I think that's the way that you also wrote that in there, in the way that you described the people in your life was very beautiful because it was descriptive, but not name calling. It wasn't like calling people out by their actual physical names, and it was still respectful in the way that you described them. So was there like a release? Was there like oh man, this is a whole nother level of my healing journey. I didn't even realize it was going to be there.
Yeah, it was way more than I ever expected. I was so ill prepared in some situations in life. Ignorance is not bliss. And we've talked about this before on a previous podcast, but just like getting sober is not just stopping drinking alcohol. writing a book is not just putting words on a pages. It
Mhm.
is so much more than that. And I said to you once, I like in regards to getting sober, I said, I wish someone would have just told me, hey, it's going to be really hard. Not that you shouldn't do it, but so that I could manage expectations.
Yeah.
Because I thought it was going to be all rainbows and butterflies, and it wasn't. I really thought the writing process was going to be just like me sitting down with my journal or my laptop when I write my blogs. And it cracked me open in so many ways that I wasn't prepared for. In fact, my nervous system collapsed because of it.
Mm.
And one part that stood out the most for me was grief. I was so sad for parts of me that went through things that I just drank over that I didn't really ever process until now as a sober woman writing about them.
Hmm.
So there was a lot of grief for that version of Lauren that, suffered the way
Mm.
that she did, and that who didn't know how to ask for help, who didn't know how to put her image management aside and let people see that there were cracks and that she was breaking. So that was a big part for me as well. And then the vulnerability hangover after hitting publish is, holy shit, you can't take it back. It's out there. You cannot undo it. It will forever live out there. Now was like huge. I
Yeah.
mean, again, the nervous system collapse was just like, I'm so proud of myself. This is going to help so many people. And I am so exposed and I just don't know how to feel right now.
Yeah. How do you respond to yourself in that?
So much grace, so much tenderness. Yeah, I basically took the whole year off writing my book, and it wasn't planned that way. I had some huge life events that just kept setting me back in a way, or like needing where I needed to take time around each event, and then that time just became this accumulation of all these months. And it was like, well, at this point, the only way I'm going to finish my book is if I literally roll up my sleeves and it's the only thing I focus on.
Mm.
So I had time where I wasn't needed elsewhere, where I could sit with the really big feelings and I could really give myself that tenderness that, you know, that version of me didn't receive. Right. And so it was almost like going back in time and giving what I didn't get then that I needed. But then once I hit publish, it was full steam ahead, and I wasn't prepared for that. I feel like in hindsight, maybe now I would publish a book and then have time to like recover
Mhm.
or going into full media exposure. It was just a huge like to my nervous system. But all in all, basically, long answer to your question, Aiua, was there was a lot of tenderness, and a lot of tears. I mean, I just cried. I cried a
Yeah.
lot, and I even say that in my book. How are there still so many tears to cry? And 8 years later,
Yeah.
that was when I was 1 year sober, and now 8 years later, how are there still so many tears to cry?
Yeah. How long did it take you? Like, when did you start writing the book, and like how long until you finalized it and published it?
In 1 year.
Oh, Jesus.
14 months if we consider that I actually started writing a different version of the book first.
Mm-hmm.
The safer way was to write a coaching book.
Yeah.
The unsafe way was for me to write the memoir. So I spent about 2 months writing a coaching book, and then I changed paths. And the memoir was October to October. I published in October of 2025, and I spent one full year
Wow.
working on it.
Would you still do the coaching book? Is that still something on your radar?
Yes,
Awesome.
absolutely.
Great.
Yeah. Because with Blurred Lines, it is memoir, but there are lessons embedded in it. What
Yeah.
I never wanted to do was talk at the reader and say, like, this is your lesson. It's like, let them read it and pull what they need, leave the rest,
Right.
right?
Mm-hmm.
And give their own interpretation of the lessons and how it relates to them, their own relatability to it. But I'd like to extract those lessons and kind of put them in a coaching book and explain them more. So
Yeah, and I appreciated that approach. It was almost like I was walking through your healing journey with you and got to experience some of the modalities as you spoke to them. Like when you talked about Reiki, when you talked about sound healing, when you talked about breath work, things like that. It's like, yeah, I got a working knowledge of that, but, maybe as somebody that's just kind of heard about it, maybe just like ancillarily, maybe I saw like a Goop episode one time about breath work or fucking energy or something, but now here's like somebody talking about this on their journey through their healing from life, right? right? And it's like, okay, cool, like sound healing. Okay, man, I've heard about that, but now here's somebody that's utilizing that practice to remove alcohol from their life. It's like, oh, maybe I could find some kind of you know, it's like, you know, it's giving an opportunity. And because you talk about sustainable sobriety, and that's a hard thing that I don't think a lot of us really think about until we get to the point of needing to sustain it. Because at the point of like just finding sobriety, it's like anything, please just give me something, right? Give me something that works. But then we start to figure out what works, what doesn't work. Like maybe I'm, like you said, more spiritual than religious. Like I like the whole like energy thing, but the God thing can maybe go somewhere else. Sky Daddy's doesn't have a really place in my vocabulary, right? But as you find what is sustainable for you and how you do have these practices, and maybe it is a continuous Reiki practice or becoming a sound healing practitioner or finding a good community you can sit with that is either sectal or religious or whatever you want it to be, right? So what are some of the sustainable practices that you found, but also something that you can kind of like coach some folks on to be like, you know, this is some of the things that you can look towards that can fill some of the gaps you might be feeling?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, sustainable is such a great word for this. It's like anything, you know, you won't be a good golfer if you don't go practice, right? It's not that you necessarily are always practicing at being sober. It's that you're embodying it in such a way that it just becomes who you are and how you show up in this world. And that does take practice at first, right? Until it just kind of becomes who you are. And so for me, it really came down to learning how to pause the reactivity in addiction. Like addiction is like high highs, low lows, and this neutral zone is so uncomfortable for a sober person.
Yep.
What do you mean you want me to be still? You know, what do you mean I'm not throwing the pendulum all the way to the left and then all the way to the right? So learning how to pause and not be reactive, in terms of not even just how I respond, but in what actions I take, was probably the biggest thing I had to learn. You know, wanting an instantaneous results button, and also wanting an easy button, but truly wanting to just, where is my flip that I can switch to stop this feeling right now? And that was alcohol. That's why it's such an effective tool. It works. And then we know it stops working. So that was big, and that carries through life. And so to this day, I'm not perfect at this by any means. I will still slam the door behind me. I'm like, oh, if I had just paused for 2 seconds longer, I would have shut it quietly, you know, but I'm not going to alcohol, right? It's no longer an option for me. Obviously I have my energetic practices, but nature, Aiua dropped nature, which has always been, I'm such an outdoors girl. I was raised in Hawaii. I'm just barefoot, scraped legs, that's me. That's who I am. And so getting outside. I'm a firm believer that when we're in our thoughts and we're in our big feelings and everything's feeling unmanageable and we're inside, like that's the size of our world. And so all of these big feelings are like pressing up against these walls and it just feels completely unmanageable and you want to hit that escape hatch. And to me, the escape hatch is get outside, make your world bigger, make the world bigger so that your big feelings are actually super, super small and so much more manageable now. So I'm a huge advocate of nature and just breathing the fresh air, getting the earth on your feet, getting into water. And of course, we have the beautiful modalities like yoga, which completely changed my life. That's how we met. We got the Reiki, which we already talked about, the sound, which we talked about. There's so many. You know,
it's funny because you mentioned the individuality and the community side. You know, I heard somebody say one time, and I'll paraphrase this, but you know, like your religious and your spiritual practices allow you to see how important you are as an individual, to realize how insignificant you are as an individual, right? Because you need to be a good, happy person to understand what's going on in here, to understand that it's not all about me and how can I help you, right? But I got to get me right first before I can help you. And I think that's one of the problems right now and that I see in the world is that like we're constantly trying to help others without actually looking in the mirror. You know, and sometimes it's that mirror of sobriety, that mirror of accountability, that mirror of like, well, I'm saying things that are counter to the actions that I'm actually doing. And where is that? Why is that not congruent? And where do I need to fix that? And some of those are these individual practices where we got to look at ourselves and be like, I am the problem in my life. But for me to be helpful in somebody else's, I got to fix me. right? And for me to be helpful in somebody else's life, the somebody else in my life are the kids that I'm responsible for, right? I won't even talk about my friends and my family, the people that I want to have in my life, but the actual humans that I am physically responsible for as a human, as their father, right? To make sure that they're taken care of, you know. And it's like, for me to understand fully what they need, I got to get me right to get myself out of the way so I can show up the best way for those girls.
I think that that is a really common way of looking at it. And I'm dyslexic in a lot of ways. And that was very backwards for me, especially going into my recovery journey. I won't even say my sober journey, but like as a human being recovering who I was truly underneath all of the maladaptive coping. Like I started sponsoring people, I think, when I was like 9 months sober. And a lot of the old timers would tell you, like, you're not allowed to sponsor people until you're at least a year sober. I felt as if I knew how to tell people what to do, but I didn't necessarily know how to do it for myself. But as I started telling people what I knew was the right way of doing things, right way, air quoting here, because it's all individual, but I felt a sense of accountability to myself. And I've, you hear the oxygen mask analogy being used a lot of times in healing spaces. And as a mother, like that analogy goes right out the window. Like I'm never going to sacrifice my child to put the mask on my face first. I may do it for a moment so that I can hold my breath and then, right. But it's like there is the other saying in the recovery space that stuck with me and still works, not as well today because I do feel rather equipped with a lot of tools, but the fake it till you make it. And so even if I'm not right with myself and I'm not fully in integrity or alignment quite yet, and I'm not saying that this is what you're saying, Adam, but my takeaway in those sensitive moments at times where I'm like, I don't want to say that message is like, we all have so much to give. And sometimes it's in the growth of feeling prideful, of being able to help someone else, that gives me enough energy to be able to like look deeper inside and make those changes. And so, it's different for each individual. But there's a woman that I follow that has a program that talked about the whole oxygen mask analogy. And it's like, in theory, it sounds really great that we should turn inward and get ourselves kind of tidied up before we go out and try to help other people. But then that's not always realistic for some people and depending on their situation. But I really love just the broad spectrum. I mean, we are all yogis and we all are into sound healing and energy work and things like that. But I'm sitting here thinking about, what about the 35-year-old mechanic who likes to play softball on the weekends? Like what are some words, and maybe that person wouldn't necessarily listen to our podcast, I don't know, but like to broaden our horizon, to step outside, right? Like, and to think about what are some really basic tools. I imagine with whoever listens to this, not everybody's going to resonate with the skills or the tools that maybe we've mentioned, but there's the things that are happening in between that maybe we could also touch on. And so I'm curious, like, if you were to have someone come to you as a client who's maybe not your typical client and they have a different lifestyle and they don't have these practices, nor are they interested in these practices, where do you start with them?
Yeah, that's great. I actually start by not pushing anything onto anyone because what works for me might not work for them, right? And so the practice is identifying what you like to do. I think that's the part that is overlooked a lot is sobriety is not a prison sentence and you're not stripping yourself of being any semblance of fun or like a cool person for the rest of your life. So you need to identify what actually brings you joy. And so for this man playing softball, for instance, like, does he recognize the level of joy it actually brings him? Because we need to do more of the things that make us happy. We need to do more of the things that make us come alive. Back to this whole idea of like healing and all of that, we teach what we need to learn. And that's why everyone's a teacher at the end of the day. But so much focus is on, what do I need to fix? What do I need to fix? What do I need to fix? We have 24 hours in a day. How many hours are you going to spend doing that? And then you only have this many hours doing what actually brings you joy.
Mm-hmm.
And so I really think that it's important to do, air quote, the healing work. I believe it's very important and non-negotiable to do some healing work, to identify what you're drinking over, what your triggers are, so that you have the practice of knowing what to do when those things come up. And it's very important to be alive in your life.
Mm-hmm.
And I think, again, just sometimes too much focus is on the figuring out what's wrong with me and trying to fix it and heal from it, versus spending time being alive.
Yeah.
And laughing and playing, and bringing back that childlike energy that's robbed from us so early. So how would I coach someone who has totally different interests than me? It would be them identifying what they're interested in, and then me encouraging them to go do more of that.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think you're touching on one of the reasons why a lot of us move towards a substance is because we've bastardized our own kind of personal journeys, right? We've stopped doing the things that make us happy. We've stopped, Brene Brown has this beautiful talk about, not being able to step into full emotions, and that's even joy. We're waiting for the other shoe to drop. So when we see something joyful, it's like, oh yeah, but what about this thing over here? Because I'm going to half look at the joyful thing, but expect the fucking punch out in the face over here on this left side, right? And so it's being the opportunity to be fully present in the thing that we're doing, right? If it's playing softball, it's playing softball, right? I'm here, I'm doing it, I'm having a good time, we're with buddies, whatever it is, right? There's a lot of like, I'm sure you got this, Lauren, either from people that you've talked to, whether they meant it or not after you wrote the book, or from yourself. Okay, cool. What's next? Mm-hmm. Not even giving us the opportunity to be at the softball game, to be swinging the bat, to be running to first base. But we're all thinking about like, fuck, I got to like take the kids and pick the kids up after this and then do laundry. Shit, I forgot. I got to like pick the car's got an oil change, all this shit, right? So we're not actually in the moment. Right. And so like the writing of the book, the actual like being in the process of, it's like, okay, cool. Now we got to promote it. Now we got to do a podcast. Now we got to do the fucking audio. Now we got to, so I think a lot of it, like to what your point is what's making you happy right now that can keep you into this moment right now with the people that are around you right now, with the smells, the sounds now, not what's going to happen, but like here, right? What's bringing you into this moment, right? And just given the opportunity and the non-needed, but the sometimes wished permission to just feel this fucking moment.
Yeah, I have to play on that, Adam, because it was something that could have come up earlier and it didn't. But it's, we hear a lot about gratitude. So important to be grateful for even the smallest things. But a word that I like to invite in that I feel is overlooked is celebration. Mm-hmm. It's so important to celebrate all the micro wins, because all of those micro wins are going to compound into something bigger, and we wait for these grandiose moments of wins or accomplishments before we celebrate, and just celebrating the simple joy of being alive. And I'm guilty of this because I spent a whole year writing a book. And then I hit publish, and then I learned that it had typos in it, that there were missed copy edits, and my whole world imploded. I felt like how unprofessional of me. People expect more from me. And it took me weeks before I realized I haven't celebrated myself yet. I completely missed the whole journey that I had just done, because of that one thing that overrode it. And so there's something that I teach my clients, which is called the brag book. Mm-hmm. And it's, you write down everything, all your wins, win after win after win, big or small. Again, those micro wins are so important. And then at the end, you have a whole book of all the things you're good at. Like, celebrate the heck out of yourself. Be your own biggest cheerleader. I think that is overlooked and very, very important. And I catch myself in it. I catch myself going to the next thing and forgetting to just like pump ourselves up.
Right.
Well, going back to it, when we were talking about your early part of sobriety, when I asked like, what was the thing that you found most challenging? It was you trusting yourself again. And when I think about things like energy healing and even a yoga practice or meditation, it gives us an opportunity to be fully present with ourselves, to be able to tune in to like what is here and doing something, God, like I'm totally stealing the brag book idea because I'm like, one, I need to do that for myself, but I know there's other people that I'm in relationship to that could really benefit from that. It's like, I don't know that there's something worth celebrating until I slow down and tune in and then trust like the genuine nature that lights up when I think about something that I did, you know? And
Yeah.
I think those like nuanced subtleties, right? I think that's so easy for us to, and this is actually funny because it touches on the idea of the book that I was actually referring to or talking to Adam about recently is, I don't remember, the title was something like between the highs and lows or something. The in between, I think was what it was, is because like in life, we are often surrounded by people in the extreme highs and the extreme lows. But like 95% of our life is spent in between those highs and those lows. And so, how do we actually trust ourselves to be in tune with what we're feeling and find those little moments of celebration, even if it's like, oh, somebody cut me off today and I didn't call them a dickhead.
Big
You
success.
know, maybe I said it in my head this time and not out loud, and that's still worth celebrating, right? But like, I think about, I've actually been doing a little bit of deeper diving on the studies of like positive reinforcement and really looking at my programming, how I've been working, what I teach. And I would say traditionally, people come to me when they have a problem that they don't want to look at. And I have a really incredible skill of being able to hold up a mirror gently. It wasn't always so gentle. It's still not always gentle. But being able to hold up a mirror and showing like, okay, this is what's going on. And I've started to recognize that I don't always love doing that. And I'm doing a little bit of research around what is the impact, kind of like what you were saying, of like focusing on the life after the problem. And, you know, I have an 18-year-old right now, and we were talking the other day about her quitting a habit that she's not happy with and not having the support by the people around her and having to reshape her friendship group. And I have to catch myself as a mom, she used the word yesterday and I wanted to like put my fist through the wall and I didn't. So I'm going to celebrate that. She said I was heckling her.
Ooh.
And I was like, and this was after a major day of effort of leaving her alone. And so I was super triggered and I was like, heckling, And she's like, and then I had the robot in the room identify what the word heckling was. But it's like, how different would our lives as an entire species be if we all learned to shift our mental frame around focusing on the problem? And I know that like a large part of our brains are wired that way. Like it is our nature to make sure that there isn't a tiger in the room that's going to attack us. But there haven't been tigers in the room for a very long time. And so I'd be curious to sit in a room and like just be a witness to how you guide people, because what I hear from you is that there's so much emphasis on the positive, and that's really inspiring. Like feeling into what it would be like to have a brag book, feeling into what is the life that I see beyond the problem, and noticing what things that I really want to do that I love and I enjoy. Like, fucking bravo. You know, like that's brilliant. And I love that you're also admitting that you're human. Like you made this huge achievement and wrote this incredible book. And then right after that, you were, you know, weary because there was some edit issues. Like, but, you know, I'm assuming the moment that you noticed that was happening, you did what you know how to do and came back to celebrate.
Problem. Yeah. So, okay. Wow. What really stands out to me here, yes, like the positivity. Um, and when we witness people who are just happy to be alive and it feels like such a contrast to how we're living, that's that's mere work, right? My
Mm-hmm.
ex is the epitome of just happy to be alive. But the ex before him, I'll make a flow chart for you guys. I was sitting on the edge of my bed one day, just really distraught, and you know, just telling I like I need to do this now. I need to, and he was like, "When do you get to stop healing and you get to just start living?"
Mm.
And that really stuck with me because, like I've already said, I do believe that there's work that's required to do, that ignorance is not always bliss for us to fully, not fully, but to have some freedom. That said, I made my early sobriety a full-time healing job. There was very little coming alive because there was so much to fix,
Yeah.
and I realized that there, not that it'll ever be balanced, but it was out of balance. There was too much work and not enough play. And so when I bring this to my clients where I'm like, what life do you want to create and how do you want to feel and all of that, there's also the realistic understanding that we don't go from A to Z,
Right.
and so for me to work with someone who is got a completely empty self-love bucket because they're fresh out of addiction to say now you need to go love yourself, that's not realistic.
Yeah.
Right. And so part of my job and how I approach things is not always just, let's make it positive, let's make it celebratory. It's all of those things. And it's let's meet you exactly where you're at and only go as fast as you're able to go, one
Mm.
little step at a time. So maybe we go from hate to maybe we can finally get to the point where you tolerate yourself. And here's how we're going to guide you to get there. And then now maybe we can guide you past toleration and get you to like yourself a little bit, and here's how we're going to get you there. And then eventually, oh wow, have we found our way to some love, right?
Yeah.
So to have these tools of what I know works to someone who's fresh is going to feel like jumping off the deep end and they don't know how to swim.
Totally.
And so there really is like the compassion and the understanding and the tenderness and the gentleness that comes with such a profound journey.
Mm. Yeah,
Wow.
I love that.
So if sobriety is reclaiming a reclamation, what are you reclaiming? Like whether it's your personal reclamation or the idea of something you're working with a client on, like what is that thing that we're trying to get back into our lives?
For me, it boils down to such a simple word, and it's happy. And fun actually is the second word. I was raised with the question, but are you having fun? And I used to say, but how can this be fun when it's, within such strict lines? And then later in my addiction, my dad would ask me, are you happy? And I couldn't say yes. That was a lie if I were to say yes. And so my reclamation really is to come back to that free-spirited, childlike energy that was misunderstood as a young girl and that I morphed to fit into boxes and to stay within lines and to actually as an adult be able to utilize the energetics of fun and to live and embody the energetics of happy. I didn't have that. It was false happiness when I was drinking alcohol. It wasn't all bad. There's obviously fun times, but it wasn't from a soul level.
Yeah.
And there are problems in my life. There are traumas in my life. There are devastations in my life, profound loss in my life. And yet there's a freedom in me that I have not experienced since I was that free-spirited little girl that started to bump up against the walls. So that's the reclamation, is that space, even though life will keep lifing.
Right. That's a beautiful way to put it. Because I think, in my own journey, reclamation, when I was thinking about that, it's like, well, I don't want to reclaim that life that I'm moving away from purposefully. Because I accidentally, well, I say accidentally, haphazardly, I purposefully found myself into that life because of the unconscious decisions I made, right? But was very purposeful in the way that I found myself into being an alcoholic and a career person and da-da-da-da-da. But I think I'm very much more aware now of the pitfalls of that idea of life for me that keeps me moving towards this new idea. So it's a reclamation of the idea of you live a happy life, but not the reclamation of the habits that got me to that life, right? It's the idea of to move forward to something new and beautiful, right? And I think that lessens the fear for me, right? Because that shows me that there's things that I can still draw on and not have to have a complete clean slate, but also know that there's new things to come that are very exciting, you know. And you know, I wanted to mention this earlier. I'm just going to drop it in real quick, but you know, there's the Joseph Campbell's hero's journey, right? And you know, Joseph Campbell, look up his work. Pretty much every story, Hollywood movie, everything since the 60s has been written in this whole hero's journey idea. And the reason I bring it up is because, like, if we look at the hero's journey, there's technically like 17 or 21 steps, but there's like maybe like a 6 or 7 main steps of this hero's journey. And the reason why I love it is that if you look at yourself, if you take that hero's journey and just like place your life within that hero's journey, you can see that there's like a next step. Oh, it's like, oh, I've just shed everything around me that makes sense. Shit. But if I look at the hero's journey, the next thing that happens from that is a new band of misfit fucking humans that pop up that have this exact skill set that you need to move forward, you know? And it's like, well, shit, cool. Okay, I'm about to meet some new cool people that have cool skill set that I don't have. That's exciting to me. Cool. Like, it's sad that I have to shed away this part of life. But if I look at this thing that's been an archetype for fucking, you know, millennia, that just Joseph Campbell decided to say, hey, look, I'm going to use Carl Jung's work and look at this and just like put some context to it. Then we can look at that and be like, oh, cool. There's another step. And then there's one after that. And this is exciting to me because, yeah, I'm going to trust. I'm going to have this faith thing that people keep talking about, you know?
Yeah.
Yeah. So it's tough, you know, but I think, you know, having people like yourself that are brave enough to take this journey and not only take it, but document it, which is fucking super fucking brave. I mean, from the moment of like your Instagram posts that I've been following since you started them to this book that you've written that you're touring with and talking about, you know, like I love being able to follow the arc of our friendship and your sobriety. But it's like, even with this book and that hero's journey idea, you know, it's like, cool, now this is happening. What's next? And not to say like, hey, Lauren, get ready for what's next, or like, don't enjoy this moment, but like, there's always something, you know, there's something cool that's going to come from this book that you might even realize or might have no idea from.
Yeah.
You're working towards it or you're not, right? All of a sudden the left fucking curveball might come up and be like, plop on your lap. And now you're talking to Oprah and you're like, Jesus Christ, what the hell just happened here?
That's the plan.
Right?
That's the plan.
Yeah. So what is the next steps for you? I know I don't want to say you like have to take those steps, but you know, you seem like a very well thought out human being and have a very good plan in front of you. So what's next for you in this journey?
Yeah, it's the plan, and it's the biggest fear. It's visibility. So I want this book to land in as many hands as she can land in, as many bookshelves. And, you know, I want to get on as many podcasts as I can to share this message. I really, truly feel like my mission here is to be a messenger of this sort of recovery, reclamation, love, all of that. I love public speaking, you know, getting on bigger stages. I love holding space. And so visibility is the plan. And I have things that are going to get me there. And it's oh shit, do you really want to be seen? You know? So it's interesting because it's like, if you don't have the energy and the alignment to get the thing that you say you want, you know, you're going to hold yourself back subconsciously, or you won't even realize that you're doing it. Unintentionally hold yourself back. And so I do have this. I'm not trying to be an influencer or like you know, where my whole life is documented in front of everyone all the time. Like, that's never. I like to write behind a computer screen and publish words, you know. But I want to be on stage to share the message. So it's like finding that what will make me comfortable so that I actually am enjoying what I'm doing. That was a very long answer to say visibility. Like, as much as I can get out there and talk about this book and this message, that is the plan, whatever it takes to get there.
I love that.
Very nice. Well, man, we are excited to chat with you, and thank you so much for your time. Where can people go to get the book, to learn more about you, speaking engagements, you know, social media, all that fun stuff?
So the full title of the book is Blurred Lines: My Reclamation of Power from Alcohol Addiction. P.S. You are not powerless. And you can learn more about it at blurredlinesbook.com. I'm also somewhat active on my Instagram at Lauren Fay Coaching. My website, laurenfay.co, is how you would get in touch with me. So it's very easy to just drop me an email. Networking is the best thing. So the best, like the biggest gift that you could give me is if you connected with the book and you pass her on, or you tell someone about it. It's not about me. It's about how many people, again, can read a message that might change their life. That's always been the intention. And so if you're willing to talk about it, then there will be a ripple effect that I think will be very impactful in a time that it's desperately needed.
Yeah. Yeah, I love that.
Beautiful.
It was sweet having you on here. I love the ways that our lives have interwoven and intertwined over all of the years, like talking about empowerment and reclamation and self-love and recovery. Like, I think for most of us, to some degree, that is our way of living. And what I take away from this conversation is, for me, when I hear Adam ask the question, like, what is reclamation? For me, even sitting in this conversation, it's just about embodiment. Like, I get to live joyfully in my body today. And even though, the idea of facing my biggest dream or fear of mine may stimulate my nervous system and pull me away for a moment, like, that recovery has given me the opportunity to be able to come back home to myself. And, like, I don't want to speak for the two of you, but I think that in some way that's always what we're all trying to offer the people that we interact with. And so I'm just, very grateful for our conversation today.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much.
It was fun. We have known each other for my entire sobriety journey. Both of you entered in at the very beginning, Aiua through recovery circles, Adam through yoga. It's just beautiful, full circle, to see where we're at today, how we're still living in purpose, living in mission. And I just want to thank you both for having the platform to spread messages that really can land in the ears and on the hearts of people who need to hear what they need to hear. And you don't know what you need to hear until you hear it, right? So just thank you so much for podcasting and, again, having the space to share these messages.
It's an honor.
Yes, honor. Thank you so much, Lauren. All right, we'll chat soon. Thank you for listening. Remember to like or subscribe to the podcast on whichever platform you're listening to. And if you found this episode helpful, please comment or share it with a friend. Check out the show notes for links to get in touch with myself, Aiua, or our guests. Thank you so much. We'll see you next time. This episode was recorded, edited, and produced by Adam Reel.